Hello and welcome to the CDO Magazine interview series. I am Jeffrey Dobin with Duality Technologies, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with Wes Anderson, Vice President, Executive Product Owner, DAS Corporate, and Head of Enterprise Data Management at TD Bank. Hello, Wes. Thank you for joining us today.
Hello, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
I see you were in the Air Force, Wes. Thank you for your service.
It was my pleasure.
So to kick things off, and for those unfamiliar, let's start with some basics. What are the main responsibilities of a person in your role, specifically focused on enterprise data management?
Certainly. So with enterprise data management, very similar to a chief data officer in one respect, is that the role varies from company to company. There's lots of different menu of options that a head of enterprise data management could potentially cover, whether it's data management capabilities, whether it's data management standards. You could break that down a little bit further in the types of data management capabilities or standards you cover, such as data cataloging or classification. Data quality is always a topic that comes up with data management. Bringing out data quality capabilities to do data quality assessments or profiling, enterprise reference data, having standard reference data sets is a scope of enterprise data management from company to company. Data retention and disposition, knowing how long you're supposed to keep data and then getting rid of it when you've met that requirement. Data access is one that can pop up in data management roles. Data protection and privacy, which I'm sure is near and dear to your heart. Data architecture comes up. Having that data organization and ensuring that we've got the technical capabilities to move data from source systems into provisioning systems and downstream to consumption systems. And then data governance is one that we are always tightly coupled with, that helping understand who the owner of data is, who's stewarding that data, what data is critical versus not critical. So none of those sound like headline grabbing data topics, but they are certainly topics we talk about in the data management space, regardless of which company that you're in.
It sounds like it's really all encompassing in any way involving data, whether it's cataloging the data, ensuring the data makes sense, making sure it's accessible, governance rules are applied appropriately. So in your type of role, right, it sounds like this is pretty broad. We'd be curious to learn, what are the top priority initiatives for people with similar responsibilities in the banking world? And how do these tie into key corporate goals?
Yeah, definitely. All of the above is definitely a priority for us. And as I mentioned, individual companies may carve up the work differently in different parts of the organization, but for a given company, you definitely are looking at all of these topics and saying, where is my data? Where's my critical data? How good is it? How long do I have to keep it? When do I get rid of it? All of these are priorities for us as a company. We have regulations that require us to do certain things with data. We have internal policies and standards that require us to do certain things with our data, to know where it is, where it came from, how good is it. And so when we talk about priorities across the company, it's foundational. Nobody is doing it perfectly today, at least not that I ran into. We all have challenges with data management, and a lot of that grows from the fact that over the last 20 years, the growth of data has just been astronomical. And the more data you have, the harder it is to manage. And so, we're always looking at, how can I organize the data better so that I don't have to store it so many different times for so many different use cases? How can we simplify that data flow and not store it as many times, but build those reusable data assets that allow us to get access to the data quicker, get our insights to the data, and turn that around on a much faster basis than what we may have done historically. So we're looking at things like cataloging. You got to know where the data is and what it is to determine whether or not you can use it. So companies are prioritizing organizing that data and making sure that they understand that that data as it continues to grow. And you can't do it on the back of Excel spreadsheets and SharePoint sites and file shares. You have to bring technology to bear to do it, especially at very large companies, very large financial institutions. TD Bank is one of the top 10 North American banks. So we have data from, the entirety of the bank's existence. And so you have to start thinking about, well, how do I manage that at scale? What are the capabilities that we need to help us catalog that data, understand where it came from? How do I profile the most critical data to make sure I understand the quality of that? Did we make changes in a system, last year that's impacting our downstream consumption? We have to, that in order to assess that, you have to know where it came from. You have to know each of those hops and those supply chains. That means we need to have data lineage capabilities to ensure that we understand where do we need to put certain controls in place to monitor that data quality. So those are areas that we're constantly looking at this company and companies I've worked with in the past.
I'd love to dig in a little bit in terms of how compliance and governance can restrict banks like TD, Bank of America, or financial institutions in general in terms of how they gain value or derive value from its data.
That's a great topic and very relevant to today's regulatory environment. It's depending on the jurisdictions that you work in or operate in as a company, there are a wide variety of law, rules, and regs that you may have to follow on what you can do with data, what you can't do. We operate both in Canada and the US primarily, and there's legislation in Canada today that is requiring us to look at certain data uses for the data that we collect, right? When customer opens up an account, we collect certain information, they transact with us, we have information on those transactions. All of that is usage of their data to support those particular products that they've signed up for. And that legislation that I'm referring to is now looking at that and saying, well, if you are using that data for a secondary purpose, you need to get permission from the customer to ensure that you can that they allow you to use their data for any secondary purpose. And so what's that do to all of the use cases that we may have? Some of those may be primary use cases that are part of supporting that product. Some of them are secondary. So we either have to go and constantly ask a customer, hey, are you okay if we do this with your data? Are you okay if we do that with your data, right? You don't want to make that a negative customer experience. So the alternative is you have to de-identify that data so that I can use that data, but I can't tie it back to an individual customer. So if Jeff has an account with TD, you transact with us, I might want to look at your transaction information, but not know it's yours. We'll just call it customer A, customer B, customer C. We can still do that, but we can't then go back and reconstruct that and say, based on the learnings, now I can know more about Jeff. It's essentially anonymizing that data.
Absolutely. Well, Wes, thank you very much for joining me today. Please visit cdomagazine.tech for additional interviews. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, Jeff.